In a world overflowing with noise, distraction, and endless commentary, silence has become one of the rarest forms of strength. The modern mind has been trained to speak, to respond, to justify, to explain, but it has forgotten how to listen. True silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of awareness. It is the moment when the external world loses its grip and the inner world awakens to its own depth. Silence is not emptiness, it is fullness contained. It holds the energy that words cannot carry, the truth that explanations cannot express. To understand silence as power, one must first confront the discomfort that arises when everything stops. The mind, which is used to constant movement, becomes restless when stillness approaches. It begins to search for something to hold on to. A thought, a sound, an idea, anything to fill the space. But silence invites you to drop all of it. It asks you to sit without control, without commentary, without need. This is the beginning of real strength, because strength is not the ability to resist silence. It is the ability to rest within it. The greatest warriors are not those who shout the loudest, but those who can stand calm in the storm. The greatest teachers are not those who speak endlessly, but those who allow their presence to communicate what words never could. There is a kind of communication that arises from stillness, an unspoken language that vibrates through energy, not sound. It moves beyond opinion, beyond belief, beyond argument. When you learn to be silent, you no longer react, you respond. You no longer fight to prove your truth, you become the embodiment of it. Most people confuse silence with weakness. They think that to be silent is to surrender, to avoid confrontation, to retreat from life. But silence is not retreat, it is mastery. It is the discipline of energy, the awareness of when to act and when to observe. Silence is the space where clarity is born. In noise, the mind becomes scattered. In silence, it gathers itself. What you call intuition, insight or wisdom, is simply the voice of silence making itself known. Silence sharpens perception. It allows you to see what others overlook, to sense what others ignore. When your mind is silent, you begin to perceive life as it is, not as you imagine it to be. Every sound becomes richer, every breath more alive, every sensation more real. Silence doesn't separate you from the world, it connects you to it more deeply. The tree, the wind, the water, all become teachers when your mind is quiet enough to hear them. There is also a moral silence, the silence of restraint. In moments of anger, silence protects you from words that could wound. In moments of pride, it keeps you humble. In moments of conflict, it reminds you that reaction is not power. The loudest person in the room is often the most insecure, for noise is a disguise for fear. But the one who can remain composed, who can observe without being disturbed, holds real authority. Their silence speaks louder than any argument could. The path of self-mastery begins when one stops explaining themselves to others. When you stop trying to convince the world of your worth, your silence becomes your statement. You begin to realize that peace does not come from winning every discussion. It comes from no longer needing to participate in every one. When you stop chasing validation, you start embodying truth. Silence is your connection to that truth. It is the field where your higher self operates. In ancient traditions, silence was not seen as absence but as preparation. The monks, the sages, the masters, they all retreated into silence not to escape the world, but to refine their energy before returning to it. Because every word you speak carries power, and the one who knows silence knows how to use that power wisely. Words that emerge from silence carry a weight that ordinary speech cannot. They come from understanding, not reaction, from depth, not impulse. To practice silence does not mean to withdraw completely from speech. It means to bring mindfulness into communication. It means to speak only when words can improve upon silence. Most conversations today are filled with repetition and reaction. People talking over one another, each trying to be heard, but none truly listening. Silence transforms communication because it restores balance between speaking and hearing. It turns dialogue into exchange, not competition. Silence is also where healing begins. When the mind is quiet, the body follows. The nervous system resets. The energy that was once scattered across worries and memories begins to return to its center. You can feel it. A soft pulse beneath the surface, reminding you that peace has always been within reach. Every time you return to silence, you reclaim your strength from the chaos of the world. And yet silence demands courage. It requires the courage to face yourself, your fears, your doubts, your unspoken emotions. Many fear silence because it reveals what they've been running from. But when you stay long enough within it, what once felt heavy begins to dissolve. Silence purifies. It removes layers of illusion and brings you face to face with what is real. Silence is the strongest voice because it doesn't seek to be heard. It simply is. It carries no ego, no demand, no explanation. It allows everything to be revealed naturally, without force. The one who understands silence becomes untouchable because their peace no longer depends on anything external. They move through life like still water, reflecting, not reacting, observing, not absorbing, guiding, not grasping. When you reach this state, silence becomes your teacher, your weapon, and your refuge. You begin to see that true communication is not about the sound you make, but the energy you carry. Every glance, every breath, every step becomes a statement of calm authority. And in that stillness, you realize that silence was never empty. It was the purest form of presence all along. There comes a moment in life when you realize that not everything deserves your explanation. The more you try to make others understand your thoughts, your feelings, your choices, the more you dilute the power within you. Energy flows where attention goes, and when your attention is constantly spent on convincing others of your worth, your truth, or your path, you start losing connection with yourself. The mind begins to scatter, the spirit begins to tire, and the silence that once held strength starts to feel invaded by noise. Explaining becomes a form of self-defense, a desperate attempt to be seen, to be understood, to be validated by those who may not even be capable of hearing what you're saying. When you explain yourself too often, you hand over your peace. You take your energy, the same energy that could be used to build, to heal, to grow, and you place it in the hands of misunderstanding. It's like pouring water into a cracked vessel. No matter how much you give, it never fills. The act of explaining can easily become a habit rooted in fear, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being alone in your truth. But true strength lies in knowing that understanding is not a requirement for alignment. You don't need to justify your evolution to anyone who hasn't walked your path or faced your silence. There is a deep fatigue that comes from over-explaining. It's not the kind of tiredness that sleep can fix, but the weariness of the soul. Every word you use to defend your choices becomes a weight. You begin to notice how your tone softens, how your energy lowers, how your body tightens every time you feel the need to explain yourself. The heart knows when it is overexposed. It knows when your truth has been spoken too many times into ears that are not ready to listen. And so silence becomes the medicine. Silence begins to speak where words fail. In silence, there is no argument, no justification, no need to convince, only peace. When you stop explaining, you reclaim your energy. You stop negotiating your truth with misunderstanding. You begin to understand that not everyone sees life from the same level of awareness. People hear only as deeply as they have healed. So when you speak from wisdom to someone still speaking from pain, your message will always sound like noise to them. Explaining to such people becomes draining because you're not speaking the same language. You are translating light into a frequency that cannot yet receive it. You are trying to feed depth to those who are still hungry for drama, clarity to those who are addicted to confusion. This is why silence is not weakness. It is energetic protection. Every time you explain yourself, you create an invisible cord of attachment between your truth and another's perception. That cord pulls at you, drains you, keeps you entangled in someone else's misunderstanding. But when you stay silent, when you stand firm in your knowing, that cord dissolves. You are no longer tied to how others see you, how they interpret your choices, or how they define your value. Freedom begins when you no longer need to be understood by everyone. Peace begins when you no longer chase understanding from those who cannot give it. There is also ego hidden in the need to explain. The ego wants to be right, to be recognized, to be approved of. It seeks to prove something. That you're good, that your way is valid. But the awakened mind realizes there is nothing to prove. The tree does not explain why it grows in silence. The sun does not defend its light when clouds cover it. The river does not justify its direction to the rocks it flows past. Nature simply exists in harmony with its own essence. So must you. Your truth does not become less true because others don't understand it. Your journey does not lose its power because others can't comprehend its purpose. The energy you save by not explaining can be transformed into creation. What if instead of arguing. You use that energy to meditate, to create, to evolve. What if the time you spent justifying your path was redirected into walking it more deeply? The less you explain, the more you embody. The less you argue, the more you attract. When you hold your peace, your presence begins to speak for you. People start to feel your conviction without needing your words. Your silence becomes your language, your calm becomes your statement, your boundaries become your message. Explaining drains because it pulls you away from presence. Every time you revisit an old misunderstanding or try to clarify your intentions, you step out of the moment and back into the past. The mind gets trapped in loops. Maybe I should have said it differently. Maybe they'll understand next time. Maybe I can make them see. But there is no freedom in that. True power exists in allowing misunderstanding to exist without resistance, to be okay with being misread, to walk away without bitterness, to rest in the knowing that time reveals truth in its own rhythm. In silence, clarity grows. You begin to see how much of your explaining came from insecurity, how much came from the need to be accepted. But once you let go of that need, you start operating from a higher vibration. You no longer try to pull others up to your frequency. You simply remain in it. And those who are meant to meet you there will rise on their own. Silence filters energy. It reveals who is aligned and who is not. It shows you who listens to understand and who listens to reply. It allows you to see that explaining is often not communication. It's depletion disguised as dialogue. When you stop explaining, you stop leaking energy. You begin to move differently, lighter, calmer, more focused. You become grounded in your being, no longer reactive to misunderstanding. You find peace not in being right, but in being true. And in that truth, your energy begins to stabilize. The mind becomes quiet. The spirit becomes still. The power you once spent defending yourself becomes the power that builds your reality. The more you conserve, the more you attract. The less you chase understanding, the more peace finds you. In a world overflowing with words, arguments, opinions, and endless explanations, discipline has quietly become the rarest form of wisdom. Everyone talks about change, success, peace, or purpose, but few are willing to walk through the silence that discipline requires. Words are easy, they are light, effortless, and often comforting. Discipline, however, is heavy. It demands structure, consistency, and the willingness to repeat what most people quit after trying once. It does not seek applause. It seeks mastery. It does not crave validation. It craves commitment. The true difference between those who dream and those who realize their dreams lies not in intelligence, talent, or opportunity. It lies in discipline. Discipline is the invisible bridge between thought and reality. It is the gap between intention and action. Discussion may provide understanding, but discipline brings embodiment. You can talk for hours about meditation, peace, or inner strength, but unless you sit down, close your eyes, and train your mind daily, nothing changes. You can speak endlessly about fitness, balance, or patience, but unless your actions align, the conversation becomes a performance, not a practice. Discipline transforms knowledge into experience. It is what turns theories into truths. The disciplined mind does not chase motivation, it builds momentum. It understands that waiting to feel ready is the first illusion that prevents mastery. When discipline takes root, the mind stops negotiating with excuses. There comes a moment when the disciplined one no longer asks, "Do I feel like doing this today?" but rather says, "This is what must be done." In that moment, freedom begins. Because paradoxically, discipline is not restriction, it is liberation. It frees you from the control of impulses, moods, and distractions. The undisciplined mind is a prisoner to its own comfort zone, constantly pulled by desires, fears, and the noise of opinions. Discipline is what builds the wall of stillness that protects the clarity of your inner world. It is the art of choosing long-term alignment over short-term pleasure. In discussion, the ego thrives. It loves to speak about ideas, identity, and intention. It enjoys being right more than being real. But discipline humbles the ego. It strips away the performance and demands consistency when no one is watching. Discipline is not glamorous, it is repetitive, silent, and often uncomfortable. But within that repetition lies transformation. Every act of discipline, no matter how small, rewires the mind toward focus and strength. Every repetition is a conversation between your present and your potential. The more you practice, the more your inner dialogue changes from doubt to determination, from hesitation to harmony. Discipline over discussion is the recognition that words do not shape reality, actions do. You can talk about peace, but if you react with anger, the discussion has no weight. You can talk about purpose, but if you sleep through your commitments, the purpose dissolves into theory. Discipline ensures that your words are rooted in truth, not performance. It teaches you that silence with consistency is louder than speech with inconsistency. The disciplined individual may speak little, but their life becomes their statement. Their presence becomes their proof. Many seek shortcuts because they confuse intensity with consistency. They believe a burst of effort will replace the calm persistence of daily discipline. But mastery is not built in a day, it is built daily. Discipline is not about doing everything. It is about doing the right things again and again until the body and mind move as one. Discussion distracts with endless possibilities. Discipline focuses on one direction. When you train, meditate, study, or work consistently, the energy that was once scattered becomes concentrated. This focused energy becomes strength, it becomes clarity, it becomes power. Discipline is also a spiritual practice. It requires awareness, patience, and humility. To be disciplined is to observe the restless nature of the mind and still move forward. It is to recognize that transformation happens not in moments of excitement, but in moments of boredom, repetition, and resistance. Most give up because they confuse discomfort with failure. But discipline understands that discomfort is the sign of growth, the proof that the boundaries of the old self are being stretched. It is not about punishing yourself, it is about guiding yourself. In discussion, people often seek agreement. In discipline, one seeks truth. The truth of effort, the truth of persistence, the truth of one's own weaknesses and strengths. The disciplined person is not dependent on motivation or approval. They are anchored in their purpose. They act because the action itself is the reward. They understand that consistency is a form of meditation. It sharpens the will, strengthens the character, and purifies the intention. Each day they rise, practice, repeat, and refine. There are no shortcuts, only small steps taken with awareness. When you stop over-explaining and start doing, life becomes simpler. The mind becomes clearer. The energy that was wasted in justification is transformed into motion. Words lose their grip and action becomes the teacher. Discipline is the daily act of remembering who you are and what you are committed to becoming. It requires no audience, no stage, no validation. It is a private dialogue between the soul and its purpose. Every sunrise offers a choice: to talk about what must be done or to begin doing it. Discipline over discussion is not about rejecting communication. It is about transcending the need to convince. It is realizing that truth does not need to be argued. It needs to be lived. The more you practice, the less you need to explain. The more you do, the quieter the mind becomes. Discussion can inspire, but discipline transforms. The two are not enemies, but one must lead the other. When discipline leads, discussion becomes wisdom. When discussion leads, discipline fades into procrastination. True mastery begins the moment you stop explaining your path and start walking it. There is a kind of strength that does not shout. It does not argue, it does not defend, and it does not seek validation. It moves silently with certainty because it knows truth does not need noise. Peace is that strength. It is the calm after the storm, not because the world has quieted, but because you have. It is the moment when you realize that silence is not the absence of power. It is the proof of mastery. The one who is at peace does not need to convince anyone of their value. Their calmness already says everything that words could not. Peace is the ultimate form of victory. When you stop reacting to everything that tries to disturb your mind, you begin to see how much energy you once wasted fighting shadows. People who seek chaos are uncomfortable around those who are peaceful because peace exposes everything false in noise. When you no longer respond with anger, manipulation loses its grip. When you no longer crave attention, approval becomes meaningless. When you no longer chase, life begins to flow toward you. The loudest proof of your growth is when your heart stays undisturbed, even when everything around you is trying to pull you back into the storm. In a world that glorifies noise, stillness becomes rebellion. The constant demand to express, to defend, to prove yourself creates a cycle of exhaustion. The more you speak, the more you feel unheard. The more you chase, the more distant peace becomes. Yet when you fall into silence, not the silence of withdrawal, but the silence of understanding, you begin to hear the deeper layers of life. You hear your breath. You hear the quiet rhythm of existence that never stopped speaking to you. You are just too distracted to listen. The louder the outside world becomes, the more important your inner silence must be. Peace is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is a controlled fire that burns without smoke. It is the choice to respond with clarity instead of emotion. It is the awareness that not every battle deserves your presence. When you are at peace, you are not giving up. You are rising above. You are stepping out of the loop of reaction and reclaiming the power that others try to provoke from you. The warrior who understands peace has already won half the battles others are still fighting within themselves. When you begin to live from peace, your perception of life shifts. You no longer measure success by comparison, attention, or approval. You begin to measure it by how calm your heart feels at the end of the day. True strength is when you can walk away without resentment, when you can remain kind even when no one understands your silence. The mature soul does not chase closure, it creates it within. The energy that once fueled arguments now fuels growth. The space that once held conflict now holds creativity. The time once spent defending yourself is now spent understanding yourself. There is a quiet power that comes when you stop needing to be right. When the urge to prove fades, the mind finds rest. You stop living from the surface of the ego and begin living from the depth of awareness. The ego wants noise. It wants to be heard, seen, and validated. But the spirit seeks stillness because stillness is its natural state. When you find that stillness, life stops being about competition. You no longer move to win over others. You move to align with yourself. Peace cannot be borrowed and it cannot be faked. You can wear calmness on your face while your thoughts scream inside. True peace does not live in appearance. It lives in presence. It is born from acceptance, from the understanding that not everything needs fixing and not everyone needs convincing. Some things simply need to be released. The proof of wisdom is not how much you say, but how much you can understand without speaking. When your mind becomes quiet, you start to see clearly. You begin to see that every reaction is a trade. You give away a part of your energy each time you engage in what drains you. You start to value your inner state as something sacred. You protect your peace not out of fear, but out of reverence. You begin to realize that peace is not found when life becomes easier. It is found when you stop allowing external noise to dictate your internal balance. The most powerful people are not those who control others. They are those who control themselves. The one who can remain peaceful while being misunderstood, judged, or provoked has mastered a level of inner strength that no external circumstance can touch. To be peaceful in chaos is not luck. It is training. It is the result of choosing understanding over reaction, compassion over anger, patience over impulse. Each time you choose peace, you are proving to yourself that your evolution is real, that your growth is not dependent on the behavior of others, but on the discipline of your own awareness. Peace is not a state you find once and keep forever. It is something you return to again and again through awareness. Life will test your calmness, people will disturb your balance, and situations will shake your focus. But every time you choose to breathe instead of react, to understand instead of attack, to observe instead of absorb, you strengthen the foundation of your inner temple. The noise outside will never stop, but you will stop being moved by it. That is the mark of someone who has turned pain into power, reaction into wisdom, and chaos into calm. Peace is not about avoiding life. It is about moving through life with grace. It is walking through fire without letting the flames burn your essence. It is the silent strength that comes from knowing that truth does not rush and wisdom does not shout. It is the gentle force that reminds you that calmness is not emptiness. It is fullness contained. The loudest proof that you have healed, evolved, and awakened is not how much you speak about your journey, but how little you need to. The proof is peace. In silence, many people believe they will find truth. They sit, they wait. They think and they wonder. Yet the truth remains hidden behind a veil of uncertainty. The mind spins its endless web of what-ifs, and the heart grows restless under the weight of indecision. But the truth does not reveal itself to those who only contemplate it. Truth reveals itself through movement, through steps taken, through the courage to act even when clarity is not guaranteed. It is through action that we begin to uncover what is real and what is illusion. When you move, the world responds. The smallest gesture, the first attempt, even the faintest step forward. They create ripples that begin to shape reality. Waiting for perfect conditions or total understanding before acting is like waiting for still water to reveal its depth while refusing to touch it. The water remains unclear because it is never stirred. Life, too, hides its deeper patterns from those who fear to disturb the surface. Action is not the enemy of wisdom, it is its messenger. You cannot think your way into truth because truth is not an idea, it is an experience. When a person acts, they put their inner world into motion. Every movement becomes a mirror reflecting back what they truly value, what they truly fear, what they truly are. The act of doing becomes the test of what is believed. Through this test, false beliefs crumble and genuine understanding begins to emerge. Consider how easily the mind constructs illusions in stillness. You imagine yourself strong, compassionate, patient, or wise. But when the moment comes to demonstrate these qualities, action strips away imagination and exposes reality. You only know your patience when tested by frustration. You only know your compassion when confronted with someone difficult to love. You only know your courage when fear demands retreat. Every action becomes a teacher that tells you the truth of your character, not the story you tell yourself. There is also a deep discipline in moving with awareness. Not all action is created equal. Many act out of reaction, driven by impulse, emotion, or fear. Such movement only deepens confusion. But when one acts from clarity, even in uncertainty, the movement becomes sacred. It becomes a practice of alignment between thought, body, and spirit. This kind of action is not reckless, it is grounded, precise, and alive. It is the bridge between what is imagined and what is real. Every step taken in consciousness becomes a dialogue with existence. You act and life answers. Sometimes the answer comes as resistance, sometimes as flow, sometimes as silence. But always something shifts. To observe that shift is to begin to see truth unfolding. It may not be the truth you expected, but it is the truth you need. Through the rhythm of action and response, life teaches in ways the intellect alone cannot comprehend. In Shaolin philosophy, movement is meditation in motion. The body moves, but the mind remains still. Each breath, each gesture, each disciplined action reveals an understanding that cannot be spoken. The warrior does not find truth by thinking about the strike. He finds it in the strike itself, in the tension of muscle, in the timing of release, in the balance of body and breath. The strike teaches what thought cannot. The truth of mastery is discovered through doing, not through discussing. In the same way, when one wishes to understand themselves or the path they are on, they must move. They must engage with the world, with others, with life itself. It is in the act of service, of creation, of risk, that clarity takes form. Each act removes one layer of doubt, one layer of illusion, one layer of fear. The truth does not arrive in a single revelation. It emerges gradually through consistent, conscious movement. Even failure, when seen correctly, is a messenger of truth. Many fear to act because they fear to fail. But failure is not a reflection of weakness. It is information. It tells you what works, what doesn't, where strength exists, and where understanding is lacking. Without taking action, you remain blind to these insights. Without movement, failure and success remain meaningless concepts. But once you act, every outcome becomes valuable. Every result becomes part of the truth you are learning to see. There is a subtle balance between reflection and action. Too much reflection without movement becomes stagnation. Too much action without awareness becomes chaos. But when reflection guides movement and movement deepens reflection, truth begins to unfold naturally. This balance is not achieved by force but by rhythm, by learning when to move and when to be still, when to speak and when to listen, when to push and when to surrender. Action also dissolves illusion because it engages the full being. Thinking engages only the mind, but acting involves the body, the senses, and the spirit. It brings the entire self into the present moment, where truth lives. In that space, the noise of mental speculation fades and direct experience takes its place. You begin to know rather than merely believe. And that knowledge, born of doing, cannot be taken away. Through action, intention becomes visible. The invisible world of thought transforms into tangible form. Every act is an imprint of your inner state upon the world. If the action is rushed, fearful, or careless, it reflects confusion within. If the action is calm, focused, and purposeful, it mirrors inner order. In this way, life itself becomes a mirror, your every movement revealing your inner landscape. To live without action is to live in theory. To live with action is to engage with truth. The path unfolds only for those who walk it, not for those who stare at it from afar. Each step, no matter how uncertain, reveals something unseen before, and each revelation invites the next step. Thus, truth is not found at the end of the path, but discovered within the movement of walking itself. In a world obsessed with urgency, where everything is measured in moments and deadlines, there lies a quiet truth that very few ever stop to listen to. Time is always speaking, yet its voice is subtle. It does not shout, it whispers through the rhythm of your breath, through the seasons that shift without your permission, through the growth that happens not in leaps, but in layers. When one begins to understand the language of time, they begin to see that rushing is not progress and stillness is not failure. Time has its own intelligence, and when we stop fighting it, we begin to align with the deeper flow of life itself. The mind wants results, it wants certainty, it wants to know when things will happen, how they will happen, and why they haven't happened yet. But life, in its wisdom, teaches patience through delay. It teaches trust through waiting. It teaches surrender through uncertainty. When you are forced to slow down, it is not punishment, it is preparation. Time is never against you, it is shaping you, carving you, refining the edges of who you are until you fit perfectly into the path meant for you. There are moments when silence stretches long, when nothing seems to move, and you question if you are lost. But it is within those still hours that something invisible begins to shift. Seeds do not grow when you watch them, yet under the soil. Life is quietly unfolding. The same happens within you. The unseen transformation is often the most powerful one. Every delay is a dialogue between your readiness and your destiny. If you listen closely, you'll realize that time has never stopped speaking. You have just been too busy to hear it. The human tendency is to fill every gap, to occupy every second, to avoid the discomfort of waiting. But time teaches through the emptiness. It is in that space that you meet yourself. Not the version that performs for the world, but the one that breathes behind the noise. When you learn to sit with the silence, you discover that time is not something to manage, but something to merge with. You begin to see that your life is not running out of time, it is unfolding exactly within it. Many think of time as a straight line, a race to be won. But time is circular, like breath, like the rise and fall of waves. What leaves always returns in another form. What is lost is not gone, it is being reshaped. When you let go of control, time shows you its compassion. It brings back what is meant for you, not when you demand it, but when you are finally able to hold it. Rushing only makes you stumble into what you are not yet ready for. The universe does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished because everything happens at the right time. When you look at nature, you see this truth reflected everywhere. The tree does not force its bloom, the river does not resist its flow, the mountains do not grow impatient with erosion. All of them listen to time. They understand that becoming takes as long as it takes. You cannot bloom in every season. Some seasons are for grounding, for stillness, for letting your roots grow deeper so that when it is time to rise, you rise unshakably. Letting time speak means learning to trust the process. It means releasing the illusion of control. It means understanding that sometimes not knowing is a sacred state, a bridge between where you are and where you are meant to be, in silence, in waiting, in uncertainty. There is a profound lesson being taught. Everything comes when it is meant to come. Not earlier, not later. When you let time speak, you stop chasing moments and start experiencing them. You no longer measure your worth by how quickly something happens, but by how deeply you are present while it unfolds. You start to see that the delays were directions, that the pauses were protection, and that the unanswered prayers were redirections. Time reveals the truth, but only to those who wait with awareness. There is a certain humility that comes from allowing life to unfold without your interference. The ego resists, it wants to dictate and define, but time teaches surrender. It shows that growth cannot be forced, it can only be allowed. Every experience, whether joyous or painful, is timed perfectly to awaken something within you. The wound that lingers does so until its message is understood. The waiting that stretches does so until your heart softens into trust. Time is not the enemy, impatience is. Those who learn to let time speak begin to live differently. They stop reacting and start observing. They stop doubting and start trusting. They understand that silence is not empty. It is full of timing, alignment, and unseen orchestration. They no longer beg for doors to open, they prepare for when they do. Time teaches discernment, for when you listen, you begin to know the difference between what is meant for now and what is meant for later. There is wisdom in slowing down, in breathing between moments, in watching without rushing. To let time speak is to honor the rhythm of existence, to understand that nothing beautiful blooms overnight, that every masterpiece needs patience. The storms, too, are part of time's language. They arrive to clear what no longer serves. What you lose in time is never truly lost. It transforms and finds you again when you have learned to listen. To let time speak is to live without constant resistance. It is to accept that timing is an invisible art, delicate, divine, and always precise. It is to realize that the path does not unfold when you want it to, but when you are finally still enough to walk it with grace